David Vaughan Icke, /Ake/, born April 29, 1952, is an English writer and public speaker. A former footballer and sports broadcaster, Icke has been known since the 1990s as a professional conspiracy theorist, calling himself a full-time investigator into who and what is really controlling the world. He is the author of over 20 books and numerous DVDs, and has lectured in over 25 countries, speaking for up to 10 hours to audiences that cut across the political spectrum. Icke was a BBC television sports presenter and spokesman for the Green Party, when a psychic told him, in 1990, that he had been placed on Earth for a purpose and would begin to receive messages from the spirit world. The following year he announced that he was a son of the Godhead, and that the world would soon be devastated by tidal waves and earthquakes, a prediction he repeated on the BBC's primetime show Wogan. The show changed his life, turning him from a respected household name into someone who was laughed at whenever he appeared in public. Over the next 7 years in The Robots' Rebellion, 1994, and The Truth Shall Set You Free, 1995, The Biggest Secret, 1999, and Children of the Matrix, 2001, he developed his worldview of New Age conspiracism. His endorsement of the anti-Semitic forgery The Protocols of the Elders of Zion in The Robots' Rebellion, combined with Holocaust denial in And the Truth Shall Set You Free, led his publisher to refuse to publish his books, which were self-published thereafter. At the heart of his theories lies the idea that many prominent figures belong to the Babylonian Brotherhood, a group of shape-shifting reptilian humanoids who are propelling humanity toward a global fascist state, or New World Order. The reptilians use the rings of Saturn and the Moon, all reptilian constructs, to broadcast our 5 sense prison, an artificial sense of self and the world that humans perceive as reality. Michael Barkin has described Icke's position as New Age conspiracism, writing that Icke is the most fluent of the genre. Richard Kahn and Tyson Lewis argue that Icke's reptilian hypothesis may be Swiftian satire, offering a narrative with which ordinary people can question what they see around them. Icke has been described as an anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist. According to Political Research Associates, his politics are a mishmash of most of the dominant themes of contemporary neo-fascism, mixed in with a smattering of topics culled from the U.S. militia movement. Campaign Against Anti-Semitism refers to Icke as a modern-day anti-Semitic hate preacher who uses social media, his books, and his stage performances to incite hatred towards Jewish people. Early life, family and education. The middle child of 3 boys born 7 years apart, Icke was born in Leicester General Hospital to Beric Vaughan Icke and Barbara J. Icke, née Cook, who were married in Leicester in 1951. Beric had wanted to be a doctor, but the family had no money, so he joined the Royal Air Force as a medical orderly. He was awarded a British Empire Medal for gallantry in 1943 after an aircraft crashed into the Chipping Warden Air Base in Northamptonshire. Along with a squadron leader, Beric ran into the burning aircraft, without protective clothing, and saved the life of a crew member who was trapped inside. After the war, Beric became a clerk in the Gents Clock Factory. The family lived in a terraced house on Leeds Street in the centre of Leicester, an area that was demolished in the mid-1950s as part of the city's slum clearance. When Icke was 3, in around 1955, they moved to the Goodwood Estate, one of the council estates the post-war Labour government built. To say we were skint, he wrote in 1993, is like saying it is a little chilly at the North Pole. He recalls having to hide under a window or chair when the council man came for the rent. After knocking, the rent man would walk around the house peering through windows. His mother never explained that it was about the rent, she just told Icke to hide. He wrote in 2003 that he still gets a fright when someone knocks on the door. Always a loner, he spent hours playing with toy trains, preferring to cross the street rather than speak to anyone. He attended Whitehall Infant School, then Whitehall Junior School, feeling nervous and shy to the point of feeling faint during morning assembly and having to leave before he passed out. The family doctor suggested a referral to a child psychologist, but his father would have none of it. Football. Icke made no effort at school, but when he was 9, he was chosen for the junior school's third-year football team. It was the first time he had succeeded at anything, and he came to see football as his way out of poverty. He played in goal, which he wrote suited the loner in him and gave him a sense of living on the edge between hero and villain. After failing his 11+ exam in 1963, he was sent to the city's Crown Hills Secondary Modern, rather than the local grammar school, where he was given a trial for the Leicester Boys under-14 team. He left school at 15 after being talent spotted by Coventry City, who signed him up in 1967 as their youth team's goalkeeper. He also played for Oxford United's reserve team and Northampton Town, on loan from Coventry. Rheumatoid arthritis in his left knee, which spread to the right knee, ankles, elbows, wrists and hands, stopped him from making a career out of football. Despite often being in agony during training, he managed to play part-time for Hereford United, including in the first team when they were in the 4th, and later in the 3rd, division of the English Football League. He was earning up to £33 a week. But in 1973, at the age of 21, the pain in his joints became so severe that he was forced to retire. First marriage. Icke met his first wife, Linda Atherton, in May 1971 at a dance at the CHES Ford Grange Hotel near Leamington Spa. She was working as a van driver for a garage. Shortly after they met, Icke had another of the huge rows he had started having with his father, always a domineering man. His father was upset that Icke's arthritis was interfering with his football career, so he packed his bags and left home. He moved into a bedsit and worked in a travel agency, traveling to Hereford twice a week in the evenings to play football. He and Atherton were married on September 30 that year, 4 months after they met. Their daughter was born in March 1975, followed by one son in December 1981 and another in November 1992. The couple divorced in 2001 but remained good friends, and Atherton continued to work as Icke's business manager. Journalism, sports broadcasting. The loss of Icke's position with Hereford meant that he and his wife had to sell their home, and for several weeks they lived apart, each moving in with their parents. In 1973 Icke found a job as a reporter with the weekly Leicester Advertiser, through a contact who was a sports editor at the Daily Mail. He moved on to the Leicester News Agency, and through them did some work for BBC Radio Leicester as their football reporter, then worked his way up through the Loughborough Monitor, the Leicester Mercury, and BRMB Radio in Birmingham. He worked for 2 months in Saudi Arabia in 1976, helping with their national football team. It was supposed to be a longer-term position, but he missed his wife and new daughter and decided not to return after his first holiday back to the UK. BRMB gave him his job back, after which he successfully applied to Midlands Today at the BBC's Pebble Mill Studios in Birmingham, a job that included on-air appearances. One of the earliest stories he covered for them was the murder of Carl Bridgewater, the paperboy who was shot during a robbery in 1978. In 1981 Icke became a sports presenter for the BBC's national programme, Newsnight, which had begun the previous year. 2 years later, on January 17, 1983, he appeared on the first edition of the BBC's Breakfast Time, British television's first national breakfast show, and presented the sports news for them until 1985, which meant getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning 5 days a week. In the middle of 1983 he achieved his ambition when he co-hosted Grandstand, at the time the BBC's flagship national sports programme. He also published his first book that year, It's a Tough Game, Son, about how to break into football. Icke and his family moved in 1982 to Ryde on the Isle of Wight. His relationship with Grandstand was short-lived. He wrote that a new editor arrived in 1983 who appeared not to like him, but he continued working for BBC Sport until 1990, often on bowls and snooker programs, and at the 1988 Summer Olympics. He was by then a household name, but a career in television began to lose its appeal. He wrote that he found television workers insecure, shallow, and sometimes vicious. In August 1990, his contract with the BBC was terminated when he initially refused to pay the community charge, also known as the poll tax, a local tax introduced that year by Margaret Thatcher's government. He ultimately paid it, but his announcement that he was willing to go to prison rather than pay prompted the BBC, by charter an impartial public service broadcaster, to distance itself from him. Conspiracy theories. Green Party, Betty Shine. Icke had begun to flirt with alternative medicine and New Age philosophies in the 1980s, in an effort to relieve his arthritis, and this encouraged his interest in green politics. Within 6 months of joining the Green Party, he was given a position as one of its 4 principal speakers, positions created in lieu of a single leader. His second book, It Doesn't Have to Be Like This, an outline of his views on the environment, was published in 1989, and he was regularly invited to high-profile events. That year he discussed animal rights during a televised debate at the Royal Institution, alongside Tom Regan, Mary Warnock, and Germaine Greer, and in 1990 his name appeared on advertisements for a children's charity, along with Audrey Hepburn, Woody Allen, and other celebrities. Despite his successful media career, Icke wrote that 1989 was a time of considerable personal despair, and it was during this period that he said he began to feel a presence around him. He often describes how he felt it while alone in a hotel room in March 1990, and finally asked, "If there is anybody here, will you please contact me because you are driving me up the wall?" Days later, in a newsagent's in Ryde, he felt a force pull his feet to the ground, he wrote, and heard a voice guide him toward some books. One of them was Mind to Mind, 1989, by Betty Shine, a psychic healer in Brighton. He read the book, then wrote to her requesting a consultation about his arthritis. Icke visited Shine 4 times. During the third meeting, on March 29, 1990, Icke felt something like a spider's web on his face, and Shine told him she had a message from Wang Yili of the spirit world. Icke had been sent to heal the earth, she said, and would become famous but would face opposition. The spirit world was going to pass ideas to him, which he would speak about to others. He would write 5 books in 3 years. In 20 years a new flying machine would allow us to go wherever we wanted and time would have no meaning, and there would be earthquakes in unusual places, because the inner earth was being destabilized by having oil taken from the seabed. In February 1991, Icke visited a pre-Inca Silistani burial ground near Puno, Peru, where he felt drawn to a particular circle of waist-high stones. As he stood in the circle, he had 2 thoughts, that people would be talking about this in 100 years, and that it would be over when it rained. His body shook as though plugged into an electrical socket, he wrote, and new ideas poured into him. Then it started raining and the experience ended. He described it as the Kundalini, a term from Indian yoga, activating his chakras, or energy centers, triggering a higher level of consciousness. Turquoise period. There followed what Icke called his turquoise period. He had been channeling for some time, he wrote, and had received a message through automatic writing that he was a son of the Godhead, interpreting Godhead as the infinite mind. He began to wear only turquoise, often a turquoise shell suit, a color he saw as a conduit for positive energy. He also started working on his 3rd book, and the first of his New Age period, The Truth Vibrations. In August 1990, before his visit to Peru, Icke had met Deborah Shaw, an English psychic living in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. When he returned from Peru, they began a relationship, with the apparent blessing of Icke's wife. In March 1991, Shaw began living with the couple, a short-lived arrangement that the press called the Turquoise Triangle. Shaw changed her name to Mari Shaw soon, while Icke's wife became Michaela, which she said was an aspect of the Archangel Michael. The relationship with Shaw led to the birth of a daughter in December 1991, although she and Icke had stopped seeing each other by then. Icke wrote in 1993 that he decided not to visit his daughter and had seen her only once, at the request of Shaw. Icke's wife gave birth to the couple's second son in November 1992. Press conference. In March 1991, Icke resigned from the Green Party during a party conference, telling them he was about to be at the center of tremendous and increasing controversy, and winning a standing ovation from them after the announcement. A week later, shortly after his father died, Icke and his wife, Linda Atherton, along with their daughter and Deborah Shaw, held a press conference to announce that Icke was a son of the Godhead. He told reporters the world was going to end in 1997. It would be preceded by a hurricane around the Gulf of Mexico and New Orleans, eruptions in Cuba, disruption in China, a hurricane in Derry, and an earthquake on the Isle of Arran. The information was being given to them by voices and automatic writing, he said. Los Angeles would become an island, New Zealand would disappear, and the cliffs of Kent would be underwater by Christmas. Wogan Interview. The headlines attracted requests for interviews from Nicky Camel's BBC Radio 1 programme, for Terry Wogan's primetime Wogan Show, and Fern Britton's ITV Chat Show. The Wogan Interview, on April 29, 1991, was the most damaging. Wogan interviewed Icke again in 2006, acknowledging that his comments had been a bit sharp. Wogan introduced the 1991 segment with "The world as we know it is about to end." Amid laughter from the audience, Icke prevaricated when asked if he was the Son of God, replying that Jesus would have been laughed at too, and repeating that Britain would soon be devastated by tidal waves and earthquakes. Without these, the earth will cease to exist. When Icke said laughter was the best way to remove negativity, Wogan replied of the audience, "But they're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you." The interview proved devastating for Icke. The BBC was criticised for allowing it to go ahead. De Christie of The Guardian called it a media crucifixion. Icke disappeared from public life for a time. In May 1991, police were called to the couple's home after a crowd of over 100 youths gathered outside, chanting "We want the Messiah and give us a sign, David." Icke told John Ronson in 2001. "One of my very greatest fears as a child was being ridiculed in public. And there it was coming true. As a television presenter, I'd been respected. People come up to you in the street and shake your hand and talk to you in a respectful way. And suddenly, overnight, this was transformed into Icke's an utter. I couldn't walk down any street in Britain without being laughed at. It was a nightmare. My children were devastated because their dad was a figure of ridicule." Writing and lecturing. Publishing. The Wogan Interview separated Icke from his own previous life, he wrote in 2003, although he considered it the making of him in the end, giving him the courage to develop his ideas without caring what anyone thought. His book The Truth Vibrations, inspired by his experience in Peru, was published in May 1991, and he continued to write, turning himself into a popular author and speaker. Between 1992 and 1994, he wrote 5 books, all published by mainstream publishers, 4 in 1993. Love Changes Everything, 1992, influenced by the channeling work of Deborah Shaw, is a theosophical work about the origin of the planet, in which Icke writes with admiration about Jesus. Days of Decision, 1993, is an 86-page summary of his interviews after the 1991 press conference. It questions the historicity of Jesus but accepts the existence of the Christ Spirit. Icke's autobiography, In the Light of Experience, was published the same year, followed by Heal the World, a do-it-yourself guide to personal and planetary transformation, 1993. The Robots' Rebellion. Icke's fifth book of that period, The Robots' Rebellion, 1994, published by Gateway, attracted allegations that his work was anti-Semitic. According to Nicholas Goodrick Clark, the book contains all the familiar beliefs and paranoid clichés of the U.S. conspiracists and militia. It claims that a plan for world domination by a shadowy cabal, perhaps extraterrestrial, was laid out in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, c. 1897. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is a notorious anti-Semitic literary forgery, probably written under the direction of the Russian secret police in Paris, that purported to reveal a conspiracy by the Jewish people to achieve global domination. It was exposed as a forgery in 1920 by Lucien Wolfe and the following year by Philip Graves in the Times. Once exposed, it disappeared from mainstream discourse, Barkin writes, until interest in it was renewed by the American far right in the 1950s. Its use was spread further by conspiracy groups on the Internet. Barkin states that Icke's reliance on the protocols in the Robots' Rebellion is the first of a number of instances in which Icke moves into the dangerous terrain of anti-Semitism. Icke took both the extraterrestrial angle and the focus on the protocols from Behold a Pale Horse, 1991, by Milton William Cooper, who was associated with the American militia movement. Chapter 15 of Cooper's book reproduces the protocols in full. The Robots' Rebellion refers repeatedly to the protocols, calling them the Illuminati Protocols, and defining Illuminati as the brotherhood elite at the top of the pyramid of secret societies worldwide. Icke adds that the protocols were not the work of the Jewish people, but of Zionists. The Robots' Rebellion was greeted with dismay by the Green Party's executive. Despite the controversy over the press conference and the Wogan interview, they had allowed Icke to address the party's annual conference in 1992, a decision that led one of its principal speakers, Sarah Parkin, to resign, but after the publication of The Robots' Rebellion they moved to ban him. Icke wrote to The Guardian in September 1994 denying that The Robots' Rebellion was anti-Semitic, and rejecting racism, sexism, and prejudice of any kind, while insisting that whoever had written the protocols knew the game plan for the 20th century. Books. Why do we play a part in suppressing alternative information to the official line of the Second World War? How is it right that while this fierce suppression goes on, free copies of the Spielberg film, Schindler's List, are given to schools to indoctrinate children with the unchallenged version of events? And why do we, who say we oppose tyranny and demand freedom of speech, allow people to go to prison and be vilified, and magazines to be closed down on the spot, for suggesting another version of history? And the Truth Shall Set You Free, 1995. Icke's next manuscript, And the Truth Shall Set You Free, 1995, contained a chapter questioning aspects of the Holocaust, which caused a rift with his publisher, Gateway. In addition to Holocaust denial, Icke claims in the book that Jews dominated the Versailles Peace Conference and created the circumstances which made the Second World War inevitable. They financed Hitler to power in 1933 and made the funds available for his rearmament. After borrowing £15,000 from a friend, Icke set up Bridge of Love Publications, later called David Icke Books, and self-published that book and all his work thereafter. He wrote in 2004 that And the Truth was one of his proudest achievements. According to Lewis and Kahn, Icke set about consolidating all conspiracy theories into one project with unlimited explanatory power. His books sold 140,000 copies between 1998 and 2011, at a value of over £2 million. 30,000 copies of The Biggest Secret, 1999, were in print months after publication, according to Icke, and it was reprinted 6 times between 1999 and 2006. His 2002 book, Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center Disaster, became a long-standing top 5 bestseller in South Africa. By 2006, his website was getting 600,000 hits a week, and by 2011 his books had been translated into 11 languages. Icke became known, in particular, for his lengthy lectures. By 2006, he had lectured in at least 25 countries, attracting audiences of several thousand each time. He lectured for 7 hours to 2,500 people at the Brixton Academy, London, in 2008, and the same year addressed the University of Oxford's debating society, the Oxford Union. His book tour for Human Race Get Off Your Knees, The Lion Sleeps No More, 2010, included a sell-out talk to 2,100 in New York and £83,000 worth of ticket sales in Melbourne, Australia. In October 2012, he delivered a 10-hour lecture to 6,000 people at London's Wembley Arena. Second marriage, politics, television. In 1997, Icke met his second wife, Pamela Lee Richards, in Jamaica. He and Linda Atherton divorced in 2001, and he and Richards were married the same year. However, the couple separated in 2008 and divorced in 2011. Icke stood for Parliament in the 2008 by-election for Haltham Price and Howden, an East Yorkshire constituency, on the issue of Big Brother the Big Picture. He came 12th out of 26 candidates, with 110 votes, 0.46%, resulting in a lost deposit. He explained that he was standing because if we don't face this now we are going to have some serious explaining to do when we are asked by our children and grandchildren what we were doing when the global fascist state was installed. I was watching EastEnders, dear will not be good enough. In November 2013, Icke launched an internet television station, The People's Voice, broadcast from London. He founded the station after crowdsourcing over £300,000 and worked for it as a volunteer until March 2014. As of that year, the station had stopped broadcasting. Key ideas. Overview. It combines New Age philosophical discussion about the universe and consciousness with conspiracy theories about public figures being reptilian humanoids and pedophiles. He argues in favor of reincarnation, a collective consciousness that has intentionality, modal realism, that other possible worlds exist alongside ours, and the law of attraction, that good and bad thoughts can attract experiences. In The Biggest Secret, 1999, he introduced the idea that many prominent figures derive from the Anunnaki, a reptilian race from the Draco constellation. In Human Race Get Off Your Knees, The Lion Sleeps No More, 2012, he identified the Moon, and later Saturn, as the source of holographic experiences, broadcast by the reptiles, that humanity interprets as reality. Reptoid Hypothesis. In his Ancient Astronaut narrative, Icke argues that humanity has been genetically manipulated by the Babylonian Brotherhood, a hybrid race of human extraterrestrial reptilians, also known as the Illuminati. He briefly introduced the extraterrestrial hypothesis in The Robots' Rebellion, 1994, citing Bill Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse, 1991, and expanded it in And the Truth Shall Set You Free, 1995, citing Barbara Marciniak's Bringers of the Dawn, 1992. In The Biggest Secret, 1999, Icke identified the Brotherhood as descendants of reptilians from the constellation Draco, who live in caverns inside the Earth. They are the deities known as the Anunnaki in the Babylonian creation myth, Enuma Elish, and the fallen angels, the Watchers, who mated with human women in the biblical Apocrypha. He said in an interview, "When you get back into the ancient world, you find this recurring theme of a union between a non-human race and humans creating a hybrid race. From 1998, I started coming across people who told me they had seen people change into a non-human form. It's an age-old phenomenon known as shape-shifting. The basic form is like a scaly humanoid, with reptilian rather than humanoid eyes." Robertson writes that Icke's reptilian idea is adapted from Zecharia Sitchin's The 12th Planet, 1976, combined with material from Credo Mutwe, a Zulu healer. Sitchin suggested that the Anunnaki came to Earth for its precious metals. Icke maintains that they came for monatomic gold, a non-existent mineral. Only gases can exist in a monatomic state, that, he writes, increases the capacity of the nervous system 10,000-fold. After ingesting it, the reptilians can process vast amounts of information, speed up transdimensional travel, and shapeshift from reptilian to human. The first reptilian-human breeding programs took place 200,000-300,000 years ago, perhaps creating Adam, and the third, and latest, 7,000 years ago. The hybrids of the third program, more Anunnaki than human, today control the world. The brotherhood which controls the world today is the modern expression of the Babylonian brotherhood of reptile-Aryan priests and royalty which came together there after the flood. By Aryan he explains that he means white. This includes most Jews, whom he regards as having originated in the Caucasus. Brotherhood aims and institutions. At the apex of the Babylonian brotherhood stands the global elite, and at the top of the global elite are the prison wardens. The goal of the brotherhood, their great work of ages, is a microchipped population and fascist world government. The brotherhood created and controls the United Nations, International Monetary Fund, Round Table, Council on Foreign Relations, Chatham House, Club of Rome, Royal Institute of International Affairs, Trilateral Commission and Bilderberg Group, as well as the media, military, CIA, MI6, Mossad, science, religion and the Internet, with witting or unwitting support from the London School of Economics. As of 2003, the Reptilian Bloodline encompassed 43 American presidents, 3 British and 2 Canadian prime ministers, several Sumerian kings and Egyptian pharaohs, and a smattering of celebrities. Key bloodlines are the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, various European aristocratic families, the establishment families of the eastern United States, and the British House of Windsor. Icke confirmed to Andrew Neil in May 2016 that he believes the British royal family are shape-shifting lizards. He identified the Queen Mother in 2001 as seriously reptilian, and said he had seen Ted Heath's eyes turn black while the two waited for a Sky News interview in 1989. Lewis and Kahn argue that Icke is using allegory to depict the alien, and alienating, nature of global capitalism. Icke has said he is not using allegory. Dimensions. It is alleged that the reptilians not only come from another planet, but are also from another dimension, the lower level of the fourth dimension, the lower astral dimension, the one nearest the physical world. Barkin argues that the introduction of different dimensions allows Icke to skip awkward questions about how the reptilians got here. Icke writes that the universe consists of an infinite number of dimensions that share the same space, just like television and radio frequencies. Some people can tune their consciousness to other wavelengths, and it is from one of these other dimensions that the Anunnaki control the planet, although just as fourth-dimensional reptilians control us, they in turn are controlled by a fifth dimension. Problem-reaction-solution. Icke writes that the Brotherhood uses human anxiety as energy. Thus we have the encouragement of wars, he wrote in 1999, human genocide, the mass slaughter of animals, sexual perversions which create highly charged negative energy, and black magic ritual and sacrifice which takes place on a scale that will stagger those who have not studied the subject. In Tales from the Time Loop, 2003, Icke argues that the reptilians create religious, racial, ethnic, and sexual division to divide and conquer humanity. Incidents and issues he attributes to the global elite include the Oklahoma City bombing, Dunblane, Columbine, 9/11, 7/7, global warming, chemtrails, water fluoridation, and Agenda 21. The incidents allow the reptilians to respond in whatever way they intended to act in the first place, a concept Icke calls order out of chaos or problem reaction solution. One of their methods is to create fake opposites, or opposomies, such as the Axis and Allied powers of World War II. The movement of societies toward totalitarianism because of these conflicts he calls totalitarian tiptoe. Red dresses. In Infinite Love is the Only Truth, 2005, Icke introduces his three categories of people. The Brotherhood are interactive software programs, or red dresses. They lack consciousness and free will, and their human bodies are holographic veils. A second group, the sheeple, the vast majority of humanity, are CO.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.